This is Gene Montra-Estelli, and welcome to the Tapping Q&A podcast, recorded live to tape from Williamsburg in Brooklyn. This is episode 289, originally aired October 18th, 2017. Hi, everyone. I hope this finds you well wherever you are and whatever time of day you're getting a chance to listen to this. Thanks for spending some time with me today. Today we have a conversation about inbraining, which is something I knew absolutely nothing about before this interview. And by the time I was done, it's really shaped the way that I think and I talk about issues and the way I work with my clients. So we'll get to that in just a moment. Before we do, just a quick reminder that we have a free 10-part guide on using EFT and tapping to eliminate self-sabotage. It's really easy to use. There's audios, there's videos, there's tapping scripts, there's instructions. Every few days, I send you a new part so you're not overwhelmed, so you can take each part and integrate it and use it before you move on to the next part. To get it absolutely free of charge, all you need to do is go to tappingqa.com, click on the big blue button. If you happen to be listening to this right now in the website, if you just go up in the right-hand column, click on the blue button there, you will be able to get it as well. So today's conversation is with founding EFT master Andy Bryce. And the conversation is about this technique called MBIT, M-B-I-T, or inbraining. And when Andy and I were having a conversation before we actually started the recording, I was just kind of asking him what was interesting to him. And he started telling me about this new technique that he has been studying. And he's one of the first people in the world to take this neat technique and marry it to tapping. And it's based on the fact that our heart, our stomach actually have this huge collection of neurons in them and function like little brains. And it's not just, boy, I have this gut feeling. We're actually getting information from the neurons in our gut as if it's giving us specific information. And so, like I said, before the conversation, I knew nothing at all. And so I just asked questions at the beginning to kind of get our feet under us to understand what's going on. By the end of this conversation, you're going to hear Andy demonstrating how he combines the two by tapping with an issue that I've been struggling with. And it's really just kind of transformed the way I think and talk about struggle. And it's really helped me in the way that I've been working with my clients. So this is something that you're going to be able to start to implement right away in your own tapping just with this short conversation. So here is Andy talking about inbraining. What exactly is MBIT and inbraining?
Well, MBIT is a collection of tools and techniques. It stands for multiple brain integration techniques. And inbraining is the process of aligning and harnessing the power of your multiple brains, which are your head, heart, and gut. They're linked by the vagus nerve, the longest nerve in the body, and that 90% of the traffic on that nerve is going from the gut up towards the head. So we've found a lot of support for how powerfully the gut affects our thinking, our emotion, and our general health.
And so when you say the gut impacts those things, are you talking about the digestive biome and what's happening there? Or are you saying something like, what do you mean by the gut is impacting these other parts?
Okay. Well, we think of the head, heart, and gut as the head creative, heart compassion, and the gut courage. Now, when we speak, or when I'm referring to the gut in this situation, I would be saying from the mouth down to the sphincter. So all that digestive tract, with including the bowel, the stomach, and
right.
And what I don't know if you know, but 60% of the heart cells are neurons. But in the gut, almost half a billion cells in the gut that I just described are neurons. So I'll tell you how it affected me. We ran into inbraining and was intrigued. We were intrigued, my wife and I. And we did the certification training as coaches to understand the concepts. And I've always been quite intuitive. And when I was learning things, who did some psychic training in the 80s, and what I realized is that, I don't see things. People were channeling and people were talking things, just telling what they heard. But I didn't do that. I sort of had to feel something, so I felt I was kinesthetic. And now I kind of feel like I have gut instincts, and I think we all do. The problem for me was that due to some circumstances as a child, my gut was quite often in fear. The fight or flight. When
right.
when you freeze, or when you're just don't feel safe. And for many years, when I looked out at the world, I wasn't looking for opportunities. I saw obstacles, I saw danger, and I didn't want to be seen. And those were some things I had to overcome. So even now, though I've been coaching others for almost 30 years and doing EFT for over 17 years now, I really saw a new level of how my gut was influencing my choices. So it isn't just the biome, but I'm sure that has something to do with it, because the healthy digestion is going to benefit us in a biochemical way and the chemistry. But really, I think the gut gives us a lot of information, and if it's coming from a place of safety, looking for opportunities, those kind of things, when a challenge presents itself, we'll see that as an opportunity and go for it. If we are coming from fear, having been hurt maybe in the past, or it triggers a memory of danger, well, then the gut is going to go, well, wait a minute, maybe we shouldn't do that.
And so when you say that, kind of this, the flip side of a coin, courage being on one side and fear being on the other, what you're saying is the organ, that is that whole digestive tract, is perceiving something, and then it is then communicating information to the brain through the vagus nerve.
And probably other ways, but definitely through the vagus nerve. And one of the things that we learn whatever language we grow up in. So you and I will be speaking English and thinking in English for the most part, unless, of course, you have other languages that you think in. But the gut doesn't speak English. It's not giving you, I'm afraid, or this doesn't feel right, or anything like that. So you need to be able to interpret the sensations. Yeah, one of my top students, level 3, and been doing EFT a long time, who came to me originally because she had Crohn's disease. Just recently, I asked her, well, do you ever listen to your gut? And she said, well, only when it hurts. So I'm thinking, in my situation, I have a pretty creative brain. I like to brainstorm, and I have, I would say, good creativity. And I'm very passionate about the things that I do. But a lot of things don't get completed, and I was wondering, why didn't I follow through on a lot of things, like publishing books and being seen more publicly. And I realized through this embraining is that my gut says, yeah, that sounds like a great idea, and I can see you're really excited about it, but I don't know. I don't think I feel safe enough to go out and publish that or be seen to that degree. And those are my issues, but probably when we have an alignment with our head, heart, and gut, everything just works because there is no resistance. I don't know if that's making sense to you.
It does. I mean, and from a metaphorical level, it makes a huge amount of sense. My sense of my head, my sense of my compassion, my sense of my courage. When those three things line up, I can see exactly how taking action becomes this effortless thing, because it is in line. I can intellectually see it as a good choice. I can feel as my connection to others as a sense of love, and I can have courage to do it. Like, that practically makes sense. So, okay, so metaphorically, I can see how that works. Practically, you're saying there's some research that lets us know that this is the case. So with that being true, then, practically, how then does inbraining work? How are you figuring out, I'm guessing you're looking through all three lenses to figure out where resistance is or worry is. What does that, I guess, process look like as you're trying to figure that out?
Yeah, well, what I've been doing with clients in the last couple of years with this is looking at, maybe they have an issue and we're talking about the issue. And so we would start with sort of putting your hand on your heart and having that issue just sit in your heart. Like, how do I feel about this? And because it's not just compassion or love, it's the emotional state,
right?
And how do I feel about it? So anything that you have an issue with, we could actually do something with, or a thought that you might have that I could work with.
So there is a situation where I need to reach out to some people to make some connections, and there's some resistance around doing that.
Great. Okay. So if you were just to consider this now, what's it like when you think about from your heart, just how your heart is addressing this issue of resistance to connecting to these people?
The whole thing just feels heaviness. It's almost like now it feels like it's made of lead and it's just sucking down. Wow.
Okay. So, with that, we've got a sort of an emotional quality and sense of heaviness, and it's sucking you down, and that's not really giving you a great momentum to follow through.
That would be a fair assessment of the circumstance. You are truly an expert.
Right. So let's just take this that we have here to your creative mind. And what do you think, as you're thinking now, you were just feeling, but when you're thinking, what comes up when you run this heart impression about this? It's heavy, it's sucking you down, but it's something that the brain, your mind has said, yeah, I should do that.
Yeah, it almost feels like sadness or mourning.
Okay, so there's when you think about it in your head, there's some sadness there. Is there anything else under that? What would be driving the sadness, do you think?
There's no, like you said before, no words, no English to it. That's just kind of the sensation that intellectually, if I was understanding it, I understand it as sadness.
Okay. Well, let's take that sadness and that part back to your heart. So let's bring this sadness to the heart, who has already been telling us there's some heaviness. So when you add this awareness of sadness to the feelings you already had, is there anything new that comes up there?
It almost feels like to go to this new place, I'm leaving something behind.
Okay.
And there's this sadness of letting go of this other thing in order to step into this new thing.
All right. So the sadness is coming from the sense of loss embedded within the moving forward.
Yeah, that's what it feels like.
Okay. All right. Now let's take this down into the gut. Now you could even put your hand on a hand on the belly button or the tummy, and just connect in now with this gut level instinct here. Let's just run it by the gut. And now, any thoughts that come up, any insights that come from let's say, we're dealing with the courage to move forward. We're moving. What we got from the head and the heart so far was a certain degree of heaviness, sadness, and the understanding or the thought of leaving something behind that it must be a valuable thing. Or is it a vulnerability, leaving the known behind, moving into something unknown? Where would you...
It's interesting when I tune into that sensation in the stomach, there is a sensation of some sort. I can experience something there, but it's not like nervousness. I know what nervousness feels like, and it's not a pit in my stomach like dread. Like those are the things that most commonly show up in that place. There's just this sensation in the middle that just feels a little off, but not sick to the stomach off. Just not quite it's just not sitting right is what it feels like.
All right. So as you understand that at the moment, when we bring this problem to the gut, it's going, well, it doesn't feel quite right. I'm not afraid.
Right.
You're not getting that fear response. But you're also not getting, oh boy, let's boogie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. So how about if we just do a bit of tapping here and just tapping. I'm going to start on the eyebrow because I tend to not use the top of the head because the points of the eyebrows and under the nose actually come over the head. So why be redundant, I think. But let's start at the eyebrow and just think about this moving forward feeling. This sadness. This feeling of loss if I move forward. How's that going? Are these okay?
It is, and it's interesting that it's almost the instant we went and focused on the sensation in the stomach, that other stuff, I'm not connected to that in any particular way at all now.
Oh, fantastic. Okay.
So whatever's in the stomach is the thing that is now primary.
Right. Okay. So let's go to this sensation in my stomach. This feeling, and I have not identified. Not clear on what it means. Would you be willing to have it more clear?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would.
Yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready to get the message. I'm ready to listen to my gut. Okay, how's that? We'll just
So along with the sadness of leaving this thing behind, there's now a little fear of what it's like to lose this thing that, in a lot of ways, because what I'm doing would be new and different. It's almost like a new identity, and just shedding this entire part of my life. And I know that I'm not letting go of the infrastructure and the people and all of that connected to the past. But it feels like, I'm leaving this all behind and I'm now alone in this new thing.
Okay. And what, when your gut, when you consider being alone in this thing, how is that registering in your gut at all?
It is, and it's not registering as fear. It's kind of unregistering as like unsteady, like you're standing on a dock when the waves are hitting, like one of those floating docks. So I'm on something solid, but the whole ground kind of feels wobbly underneath that. Okay, so
would you be feeling something like this uncertainty needs something to be more clear, something to that you don't have yet that you need to feel stable enough?
Not really. It's not that something new would give me it. It's just the unknown is that way because it's unknown. And so it's not super resistance because there are times in which I'm stepping into the unknown and I can do it, but it's still like, this is unknown and I don't know what's coming.
Right. Well, what I meant was not from outside you, but from your heart or your head. Is there something that if we went back and said, okay, so let's go back up to the heart. And
it's really interesting. The instant you just said that, like there was this sense of, because of what I'm stepping into is something that I really believe in, even though it's uncertain, that's okay. And it's almost like this warmth just poured right from the heart downward, and I could feel, not all the way, but I could feel it relax significantly in that gut area.
Oh, okay. So what do you think that was? What was the message the heart delivered?
It was basically saying that you really believe in the change that you're making, and it's significant, and you've been through things that are unknown before, but when you're following something you believe in, even if it doesn't work out the way you want it to, it works out. Something good comes of it. And so even though it's uncertain and the path isn't mapped, you're going to find your way to a place, to something that is good, even if you don't know exactly what that is.
So what's that like in your body now?
So that's really comfortable, because I've always been, for me, I've always been comfortable doing, like, I am one who is more willing to boldly step into things than maybe people around me. And so it's like, oh yes, we've been through this before. And it's almost like there was a clicking of examples of past experiences where I had that uncertainty, and on the other side I can see it's good. And even when it didn't work out perfectly, you know, I didn't die. So it was okay. And so there's just kind of this calming sense of, okay, it's almost like now I'm in a rocking boat, which is just natural. And in a rocking boat, you rock as you go forward through the sea.
Right. So you gradually get your sea legs.
Absolutely. Yeah. So even though it's not exactly stable, it's not a scary, uncomfortable thing. I can manage it now.
Right. Has anything changed in your awareness of the gut? That feeling, is it
there's just,
in a physical sense?
Yeah, there's just a tiny little betin there, and it's almost more like, hey, just make sure you're paying attention. Don't be careless. Don't be reckless. And it's not even like screaming to get my attention, but it's just like, I'm still here. I'm still here. Don't forget. I'm going to keep poking you if this goes awry.
Okay, and then let's just take it back up to the heart from the gut, and that request is just, let's make it that request to your heart. And in this venture of moving forward, you keep this awareness of the concern and all that.
So I am one who, when I'm doing work with myself, I almost think of my internal system as this giant factory with all of these parts working together. And so I'm constantly I constantly have conversations like that. And so it's almost as if we've been doing this, there's been this strong concentration in those three areas. And the three of them are like, great, we're on the same team. Let's move forward. Like there's a sense of unanimity of purpose, knowing that each part is looking out in a different way, but there's a real sense of connection between the three of them. And it's not even a straight line. It feels almost like a circle as they connect from stomach to heart to head back down to stomach.
Exactly. In fact, I would think how we just did that. We started in the heart, we went to the head, we came back to the heart, we went to the gut, we went to the heart, and then we'll come up. So it's actually like an infinity cycle of, and you know, I really appreciate your willingness to do that, and how it may seem really easy because you're so experienced with this kind of inner communication. But does that give a sense of how this?
Yeah, and the thing that I really love about an approach like this is that, at least for me, when I have a good, useful metaphor to look at a lens through what's going on, it gives me the ability to ask questions about the problem in really different ways. And that's not to dismiss any of the biology that we talked about at the beginning, but it's just like, okay, great. How am I thinking about this intellectually? How am I thinking of this emotionally? What is the fear that is showing up? How do those things interact with them? And just having an organized way to think through the problem in that way, even if I don't understand any of the biology or the science behind it, it's instantaneously a great entry point for me in just the work that I'm doing. So I love the way that, I mean, in the beginning when you were describing it, you were kind of breaking the parts into the three parts. It just sunk in my head. I'm like, oh yeah, this is a really great way to think about my experience moment to moment. So that's really super useful.
Yeah, I think for me, the just having this conversation with my gut and including it and feeling safe. And I used to feel, well, when I was younger, I wouldn't speak publicly. I couldn't speak to a group. I would be too shy, embarrassed, or whatever. And this, with the last 15 or more years, it's not been so much of a problem. But I do have anxiety before, just going on, and now I've realized, that's really my solar plexus, the will center expanding, the energy building, and the gut is actually not anxious or afraid for me. It's really getting ready. It's preparing, and that was just a nudge from oh, this feels weird, to, oh, right, okay, we're ready, we're going, it's time. And that was just feeling safe in the ventures that I take, in the sense that I'm safe enough to take a risk,
right?
if that makes sense. Because I think that's what you're saying too, right? It's like, I know this is unknown, but I trust myself to handle everything that comes up.
Mm-hmm.
And
And so I guess when we were chatting before we started the interview, you mentioned the fact that when you started studying this, the person you studied with had no experience with EFT or tapping of any sort.
Right.
And so I'm guessing that the way that we marry these two processes together, just like we did just a moment ago in the demonstration, is we're tuning in and getting information from these three places, and the way that we would come up with a memory or anything else to tap on, this is just a more precise, consistent way to get some information that allows us to then go in and tap, and then we'd use our regular tapping tools for what comes up. Yeah,
it's I think how EFT has enhanced so many modalities and systems, and blended with a lot of different NLP techniques like timeline and stuff.
Absolutely.
It works here as well, in that I still feel that tapping is one of the most brilliant advances in the past 100 years. There are people who are saying, well, you don't need to tap anymore, but I think that there is value in that, not only in physical health, doing it every day, but I'm a little more flexible on how, like not having to all the time have the setup phrase and that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
So, when you're in the, sorry.
No. And so with that, then I guess I just have a practical question. When you're asking the questions and you're doing that process, are you doing the questions and touching the places and then tapping, or are you ever in a situation where you are tuning into the heart and having this conversation and tapping simultaneously?
Yes and yes.
Okay.
If there are, I think that the tapping on a sort of a consistent throughout a session is great, because 15 years ago I was doing talking and tapping as just like people would tell me, come in and say, this is what's happening. I say, okay, well, you tell me what's happening, you're tapping. And they would get to a place in their narrative that they'd never been before. They would be able to move through that wave of that used to knock them down. So, I think that when we're doing this embraining style of questioning and interrogation for the person to draw out of themselves their own wisdom, their highest wisdom, often we'll run into something that's in the way, and we can tap specifically on that.
Right.
Like I just very briefly did with you, but quite often it's something that comes up, and I think even with the parts integration,
absolutely,
sometimes people try to integrate those parts and they go, oh, no, I don't feel I can do that. Well, if we tap with that, I find that EFT and parts integration speed things up tremendously. So with this process as well, I think just being aware of an emotion that comes up, and then we get stuck. And for you, there was, this physical thing, and
right.
and Gary Craig had always told us, bring it back to the body, and this is important to me as well, because a lot of times I find that clients go up in their heads and they live there because it's safer, especially men.
Well, and I also think that we are notoriously bad eyewitnesses to our own experience. And when we're intellectually trying to figure something out, we're just looking for a reasonable explanation, and it might not be right. I just need a way to explain why this is the way that it is. But when we go into the body and start asking the body questions, then we're able to disassociate and get a more authentic piece of information. So, Andy, thank you very much for kind of sharing this disposition. Like I said, it's such a thoughtful way for us to be able to break down the problem and give us access to the system. Thanks for your time today. I appreciate it.
Well, it's my pleasure. I haven't really had the opportunity to express to anyone, other than my clients as I introduce it. But so that's really the first time I've attempted to explain it the way I'm doing it. So I appreciate that opportunity.
So there you go, a really fascinating conversation about a topic I didn't even know I was interested in until the conversation started. If you'd like more information on inbraining or Andy and all the great work that he is doing, all you need to do is go to tappingqandapodcast.com and click on the link for episode 289, and you'll find all of his contact information as well as other resources that you can use right away. If you have a question, if you have a comment, if you'd like to have something covered on a future podcast, please let me know. You can always reach me at Gene, Gene, at tappingqna.com. Click on that contact link on the website, or if you're one of those smart people who've downloaded the Tapping Q&A app for either your Apple or Android device, just click on the contact link. You can send me a message from right in your smartphone or your tablet, or you can even leave me a voicemail message if you'd like. I would love to hear from you. There's actually an interview that's coming up in a couple of weeks that only happened because of a recommendation, because of a listener just like you. So let me know what you're thinking, how I can serve you. If you know someone in your life who could use this or any of our past episodes, please be our ambassador. Don't spam your inbox and send it to every person in the world. But if you know someone who could really use the information that we shared today, please just pass it along. You will make their day better, and it doesn't take more than a few seconds to do exactly that. For the Tapping Q&A podcast, this is Gene Montrestelli. I hope you have a great day, and I will talk to you real soon. Bye-bye. The Tapping Q&A podcast is copyright Gene Montrestelli, Tapping Q&A 2016. All views expressed by guests are those of the guests and not necessarily of Gene Montrestelli or Tapping Q&A.